Assalamualaikum and very good afternoon. So today we are going to have a lab briefing for EBP116 Polymer Engineering Lab. So this briefing will have two sections. The first video will cover lab report guidelines and the second video will cover lab safety. So I will make these two videos available in e-learning for the whole semester so that it will be easier for you to check, refer and listen to it anytime. However, it is compulsory for you to watch these two videos within this week because we will start our lab next week. And at the end of watching these two videos, there will be a lab safety quiz that you need to answer. The link for the quiz will be available in e-learning, so please check your e-learning. Alright, so before we proceed to lab report guidelines, let me introduce to you the course synopsis for this lab. Okay, so the lab, the course synopsis for the lab is this laboratory has been divided into 10 experiments. So for the whole semester you will need to do 10 experiments that will cover about 15 weeks of lab work. So the total hours should be around approximately 56 hours of lab. Okay, and for the course outcome, so at the end of this lab you should be able to perform polymerization process and analyzing physical and mechanical properties of polymers. The second CO is at the end of this lab you should be able to analyze experimental results and produce technical report that fulfill the course requirement. And lastly, you need to be able to design experimental procedure in characterizing polymer properties based on ASTM standard. Alright, so we will have 3 course outcome. Okay, so for the contribution of assessment, the lab will cover two assessment. The first one is test and quiz, which accumulate about 20% of the marks, and most of your marks will be on the lab report. So that's why you need to listen carefully to the guidelines so that you can produce a good report, because it consists about 80% of your marks. Okay, so this is the laboratory schedule. Okay, so this I hope that this stays and won't be changed anymore. So please refer to this schedule every week, because there are some weeks that maybe you don't have lab. Okay, so the ABC is the group, which I will give you the group letter in e-learning. Alright, and the W is the week. Okay, and at the left is the number of experiment. These are the list of experiments, examiners and the instructors that will involve in EBP116. So you can refer to this to know where is the lab, who is the examiners and who is the instructors. So basically the examiners is the lecturer that will mark your lab report. So during the lab the lecturer will give you a brief introduction about what will be you doing on the lab on that day, and we will try to give you the fundamental, or what are the subject that you have learned and now you are going to have a practical on it. The instructors is the technician who will help you on the practical part to do the experiment. So you are free to ask questions to examiners and also instructors. Alright, now let's move to the lab report guidelines. Alright. Okay. So for the laboratory manual, you can refer to e-learning. So I will put everything, all the resources in e-learning, so you can always go there and check it out. And you also need to submit your lab report also in e-learning. Okay, that the data or any information will be provided by the examiner and will be made available every week on Monday 2 p.m. Alright, so there will be some lecturers that will give you some information about the lab, okay, and they will put the information in the e-learning. So what you need to do is after you have done your experiment, you need to prepare your report and answer if there is any related questions regarding the experiment that you have done. Okay, for the submission, the due date is 1 week. So after the experiment, you have 1 week, okay, to finish before you need to do the next week experiment. All right. So the report received later than the stated time will not be assessed and will be awarded less mark. So in e-learning, we will set the date. Okay, so if you submit late, it will automatically send us notification that it is a late submission. All right. So these are the steps to write lab report. So what you need to do, okay, what you need to have in your lab report. Of course, the first one is title page. Okay, so for this title page, we going to have a standard. Okay, everyone will be using the same title page. So please refer to Appendix A in guidelines provided in e-learning. So just use the template that we have give you. All right, and then what you need to do is the first thing you need to write is the abstract. Okay, so what is the abstract? So basically, abstract is a well-written abstract, contains a general introduction to the topic. Okay, so you need to have a little bit on the introduction of the topic, outline of the methodology that you have used in your experiment, significance of result, and the summary of a conclusion. So abstract is the first thing that the examiners or people read. So it has to have a summary of everything of what you have done. Okay, but only a short, okay, 1 paragraph. Then after abstract, you need to have an introduction. So what is an introduction? What you need to put introduction? So basically, for introduction is mainly about the background of the experiment. For example, if you are doing emulsion polymerization, so the background will be about the fundamental of the emulsion polymerization itself. Okay, so for introduction, you need to put a citation. Okay, for abstract, you don't need to put a citation. Then after introduction, you need to write about the materials and experimental procedure. So in this section, you need to list out all the materials that you have used in your experiment. Any chemicals, any powders, any equipment. Okay, so if you have picture during the experiment, you can feel free to take pictures and you can put it in your lab report. Okay, and one tips for experimental procedure. For the English, it must be in past tense because you already done it and you want to report it, so it need to be in past tense. Okay, and next about results and discussion. Okay, so basically this consists of a collected data or results that sometimes can be presented as calculation in table, figures, or both. Okay, so not only you are reporting what you have done and what you are observed, but you also need to analyze and also explain your result, explain the graph, explain the table, or explain the calculation. Okay, and relate it to the basic concept of the fundamental that involved in the experiment. Okay, and lastly, for result and discussion, you have to have a reference citation. Okay, and for the formatting, it should be in Harvard referencing system, and you can I will give you the details later, and you can always refer it in e-learning as well. All right. Next is the conclusion. Okay, so for the conclusion, you need to state the significant findings from the experiment. Okay, so there are many students that sometimes like to write everything in the conclusion. No, you don't have to write everything. You just need to write the significant findings from all your experiment. What are the significant findings? What are the findings that answer to your objective? Okay, so that is the thing that you need to put in conclusion. Don't put everything. All right. Okay, and lastly, after conclusion is the reference. Okay, you can use Harvard referencing style. Okay, so for the minimum pages is 6 pages, you can go more, but please do not write too much on the lab experimental. I will give you minimum 6 pages because there are some students like to put pictures, so that's good. All right. Okay, so for the formatting, in the orange box you can see all the formatting. The font type, Arial, font size 11, spacing 1.5, and there are detail on the margin, page numbering, major heading, and also paragraph alignment. So please do, and please refer to this formatting, and make sure that your lab report follow this this guideline. All right. Okay, so briefly I will explain to you about the example of the abstract of what you can write in the abstract. Okay, usually for abstract, the writing structure follow they have consists of 3 parts. The first one is experimental objective. The second one is you need to highlight the methodology, and lastly you need to highlight the result. So at the right hand side you can see the examples of wording or sentences that you can start to write your abstract. For example, the first one, okay, you can always start, the objective of this experiment was to, what you want is what you have done in your lab. Okay, or you can use in other words, in this study, the spectroscopy identification of polystyrene using immersion polymerization technique was investigated. Okay, so state your experimental objective. Just go directly telling us what you have done, okay, and what you are going to achieve. Okay, and then straight to methodology. Just highlight the method that you use for the experimental. For example, the immersion polymerization was carried out using, list out the materials, some of the materials, and also the equipment. Okay, not everything, just the most important thing of how you're going to get the product that you will do, that you have done in the experiment. Okay, the second example is the product obtained was analyzed using. So if you want to highlight the testing, you can use the sentence, the product obtained was analyzed using, for example, FTIR, to measure the what. Okay, and lastly, highlight of the result. So go straight, the result reveal that. Okay, so just highlight. Okay, the most important part. Okay, remember this is abstract, only a short one, you don't have to highlight everything. Alright, next for introduction. So what you can write in introduction. So I'll give you some information. Okay, the first one, you can write about general description. For example, like define types of polymerization. So for example, immersion polymerization is blah 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 blah. And then you can go to classification, because in polymerization there are many types of polymerization. So you can also state the other classification before you go further into immersion polymerization. And then you can also describe the function, mechanisms, and also the detailed explanation about the polymerization involved in your experiment. And lastly, just a brief about the application. So what are the application that people are exploring using this technique of polymerization? So just stated there. All right. Okay, so for method, consists of 3 parts. The first one is materials, list out all the materials, and then list out how to prepare the materials. There are some experiment that have samples preparation, so you need to list down or write it in a very detailed manner. And lastly, testing. So usually after you prepare your material, you have your product, and then you need to do testing. So you need to list out, write out the testing part. What are the equipment that you have used, and how is the sample preparation, or how is the equipment preparation to test your material, right? And a little bit of tip and tricks for methodology. Always use present passive. For example, is measured, is conducted, or past passive, was measured or was conducted, because like I said before, you have done it. Okay, for result and discussion, what you can cover in your result discussion. Okay, the first one, what you need to do is you need to present your result. Like I said before, in presenting your result, you can use table, you can use calculation, you can use figures. So just put any graph that you have. Okay, first thing, present your result first. This graph shows whatever. Okay, and then after you present your result, you need to interpret. For example, if you do tensile test, so you can see there are increment of the trend, so you need to interpret. So this figure shows something, and it shows an increment from A to B, whatever. Okay, and then proceed with discussion. You need to discuss why the trend is like that. Okay, what are the fundamentals that lies behind the trend. So you need to explain why it increased, and if it decreased, why it decreased. So if it's fluctuate or it is maintained. So just discuss about the trend of your result. And lastly, you need to have a supporting statement. So you need to always support with a fundamental, or if you can find other people observing the similar trend, you can put it and cite their journals or information, just to show or to support your result, saying that there are some other research that also found this behavior, these trends. All right. Okay. And lastly is the conclusion. So for conclusion, it consists two parts. The first one, you just need to restate the main objective, so what you have done today. And second part is summarize significant finding. Okay, so like I said before, don't list out all the findings that you have list out or you have written in the result and discussion. Just pick the most significant findings that answer your objective. Alright, so another tip and tricks for table, don't forget that the table caption for table, okay, the table caption should be always on top of the table. Okay, and in your writing, so in your lab report, you need to always mention the table where for example, table 1 shows the feed consumption. Okay, so that when people read, we know that when you say table 1 shows, and then we can go down and find where is table 1 and refer the table. But for figures, okay, remember just now table, the caption is on top. For figure, the caption should be below the graph. Okay. Alright, so these are the reference, okay, that you can follow if you are referring to a journal. Okay, so you can refer here how to write the reference for journal, and at the bottom there, how to write a reference for a book. Okay, so I think that's all for the lab report guideline. So I hope you can produce a good lab report and have a good mark. Alright, okay, thank you, good luck.